Good morning, everyone. Sorry, we're a few minutes late starting today. Just had a couple of technical issues on our side. Um, this is, I think, the fourth one actually now in our series of Hub Insights talks. For those that haven't joined them before, the purpose of these is to provide Hub members with a chance to get to know the community a bit more. And start to put a bit of a face to some of the active members of our community. As always, thanks for taking the time to join. And without any kind of further ado, I'll jump into it. So today we've got May Winfield and Peter Van Manen with us. May works at Buro Happold, has been there for quite a few years now. I'll let her tell you a bit more about that. And then we've got Peter Van Manen from Fraser Nash. So May, let's kind of start a bit with you. Would you kind of mind just giving us a little bit of background as to who you are, what your current job is, and then we can have a little bit of a chat about how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Sure, thanks, Sam. I've been a construction lawyer for about 15, 16 years. And I've been involved in BIM and construction technology for about 10 years. And I've worked both in law firms as well as I was at Carillion before I was at Buro Happold. I'm currently the head of commercial and legal for Cities and Digital at Buro Happold. And that means I am heading up the legal and commercial aspects of the cities and digital businesses there. So from a digital side, that includes both dealing with the contracts as well as developing new services with the teams, looking at how we best risk manage the processes. And I think the difference, there aren't many lawyers involved in construction tech still, but because I've been doing both for a long time, I kind of speak both languages, if that makes sense, trying to explain the legal side to the business in a way that makes sense.
Was there something that particularly attracted you to working in kind of construction law, or is it more kind of the right opportunities came along at the right time and you ended up doing that?
Bit of both. I've always loved architecture and that sort of thing, and the opportunity came about to work in a law firm that specialized in it. But then in about 2011, when the BIM mandate came about, I'm a real tech geek at heart, and there was an opportunity to combine my personal interests with what I do for work. And I remember going to all these technology conferences and people sort of saying, what on earth are you doing here? It's nothing to do with law. It's all about technical and it's about the engineering and the architecture, although that's changed, I think, in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I've definitely seen over the last couple of years is where technology is, I guess, increasingly converging with construction, the kind of importance around getting the legal side, the liability side of it is becoming increasingly important, and people are becoming increasingly aware of the role that plays. Is that kind of something you've seen as a lot of people kind of starting to give a bit more consideration to the legal implications?
Yeah, and the fact is, disputes have been going on for years, but not in public, because no one really wants to be the first person to take a dispute to court and try to explain to a judge about the particular technology. But you see tenders and contracts which say, I want you to do some BIM. And you ask the client, what do you actually mean? I don't know. I've read about it. It's supposed to be amazing. And you see that now with digital twins. I want you to produce a digital twin. What that could mean, anything. What do you actually want to use it for? And how do we price for it? There's so many potential things that could go wrong. Who owns the data? And whilst it's painful to talk about it at the beginning, it's better to do that than halfway through a project you think, oh, actually my understanding and your understanding is wildly different.
Yeah. No, brilliant. That's really helpful. And I guess one last question: what's kind of Buro Happold's sort of engagement in the kind of digital twin space? Is it something they're firmly behind, or is it kind of an area they're just sort of looking to get involved with at the minute?
So Buro Happold's very technologically minded and I'd say forward thinking, which is one of the things that attracted me to Buro Happold. And we actually have a separate digital twin service, which provide all different aspects of it. And it's part of our computational and other digital aspects. So the aim is kind of having a data-driven approach. So you're giving the right data to the client at the right time for the right purpose. And we've been doing that for a number of years now. And the results we've seen with clients are quite interesting, quite amazing about the sheer potential of digital twins.
Yeah, no, it's really, really cool to hear. And Peter, you've been, I guess, been working in the digital twin space in one guise or another for quite a few years. Would you be all right to just give us a bit of background on what your current role is and how you've ended up where you are?
Okay, so I'm a principal consultant at Frazer-Nash and involved primarily around the digital space, which is digital twins for defense and critical infrastructure. Been with Frazer-Nash for a few years now. Before that, I spent about 22 years in motor racing. So I was the managing director of McLaren Electronic Systems, and we provide all of the control and data systems for Formula One, NASCAR, and IndyCar. And although we didn't call things digital twins back in those days, they were, it was a mixture of models, simulations, which are sort of collected with data coming from the cars on the track to keep them valid and up to date. And so I guess my exposure to digital twins goes back about 30 years now.
That's pretty cool. That sounds, yeah, I mean, we often talk about how motor racing's been doing digital twinning for a while longer than the kind of construction and built environment sector. Is it something that kind of just came out through necessity in that sort of space, or was it an opportunity that people saw kind of to get greater improvements at what they were doing?
I think, I mean, it sounds a bit strange. You sort of think Formula One, plenty of money, etc. It was about saving time and cost, not wasting time and wasting effort. And because you are evolving the cars so quickly, being able to have a better decision support is helpful. And the digital twins were providing that help with making decisions, because things were just changing so quickly. Keeping all of this in your head it hurts. So digital twin provided a way of assessing what a change might do, what the outcomes might be, reducing the uncertainty associated with change. And so it was essentially a way of doing things quicker at a lower risk and hence at a lower cost.
I mean, it sounds like quite an interesting sector to have worked in. What kind of prompted the move in your mind over to kind of the construction and built environment sector?
Well, I think that Formula One is fun. It's you get to a point in your life sometimes where you think, well, maybe I should be doing some things that are more complicated and more relevant to the real world. And so involved in critical infrastructure, it's a messier problem, but that in itself has great challenges about it. And I think that we are certainly at a time at the moment where there is so much change going on that without digital twins, you're never going to tackle a lot of these problems. And so it's a good time to move into more complex problems.
I'd be quite interested to ask both of you this question. Do you, within Frazer-Nash and Buro Happold, do you kind of have an organizational view on what digital twins are, or is it more of a personal viewpoint you tend to hold? I don't know if you want to start with that one, Peter.
Yeah, I'd say we have an organizational view in as much that we see digital twins as a way of supporting decisions and managing risk. And the approach is very much how can I bring together a sort of a mixture of physical model, what I can measure, and where I have to use mathematics probability to sort of fill in the gaps. So it's making sense of imperfect information to be able to make trusted decisions. And so I think that that mixture of sort of science, measurement, and maths underpins all of the different digital twins that we build.
That's a really astute view, and I think that's really important that imperfect data is just the reality. We're never going to get to the point where we've always got access to high granularity, high quality data, and it's often cost prohibitive to even consider doing that. What's the does that kind of align with the view you hold, May, and within Buro Happold?
Yeah, definitely. And I think whilst we feel obviously at its heart, a digital twin is a digital representation of a physical asset, whether the physical asset exists now or later, and how the data flows between the two. But fundamentally, a digital twin is to enable better solutions for the client and to enable maybe new, more innovative solutions, because you can test things out, you can be more agile and flexible. And it also changes the way, say, engineering services relate with the client, because it's not, your services don't just end when the construction ends. It could carry on as a digital twin evolves to make your particular asset function better. So it's thinking outside the box of traditional construction to provide just things which work better both for the client but also for the users of the asset, which is very important.
Yeah, I think that's a hugely important piece to remember, is that when we talk about digital twins, it's not just for commercial benefit. It spans the whole spectrum. That in theory, if we get this right, it can impact us as consumers of infrastructure as well. I think that's a really important point to capture. So I guess part of the core reason we've got you and Peter on this call today is as a result of the work you've both been doing on the Digital Twin Toolkit, and I know that recently went live on the Digital Twin Hub and is now accessible. I don't know if you wanted to just kind of start off with giving those that aren't aware of it just a very high level overview of what the purpose of that is and what it is really. Did you want to start us off on that, May?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the issues that with asking people to adopt digital twins is, from a business perspective, management will always say why and what's in it for us. Prove to me that is going to be useful, and how do I do it? And you need a set of tools for that, and you need a business case. But if you're starting from a blank piece of paper, that's very difficult to provide, show value, to show measurable improvements. And the toolkit's intended to do that. So starting from the very basic of what is a digital twin, so you can explain it to someone, to business cases, use cases, how you, including things like legal guidance, what are things you need to bear in mind if you're implementing digital twins as part of your business. So you can go up to senior management and explain to them why it's a good idea, what are the benefits, but actually then help you to actually the doing of it as well. And hopefully that will also enable some standardization, because we can learn from, say, the lessons of BIM, where it was for a long time people were just doing BIM in inverted commas, and the range of how that was interpreted varied widely. And while that's changing now, it's taken many years, because there wasn't, at the beginning, there wasn't, say, one standard guidance of here's the best practice, here's some examples of how you can do it properly.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, May. I think that's a really clear way of describing it. And I think as well, just for people's awareness, we're just starting on that bigger journey towards developing standards in this space. But I think, as May's kind of indicated, there's still quite a lot of that just convincing people process that still needs to happen, and making things much more accessible. Peter, did you want to give bit of a sense of what kind of, I guess, your core role was in helping to develop that toolkit?
Yeah, I think the oftentimes the difficulty is how do you get something started, because once people start to adopt the digital twins, they can rapidly see where they can use it more, get more advantages. So part of the toolkit was, how do I help people sort out their use cases, the purpose for thinking about a digital twin in the first place. Then it comes, as May said, around the business case, which is how do you identify both the benefits that you could get and the blockers, the things that are going to make it hard to do. And that helps you sort of engage more with the organization with whom you're talking. And then it comes down to, well, how do I start architecting and building this so I can start getting benefits quickly and then grow over time? Because the successful digital twin evolves in the same way that physical things evolve. It's an asset that you have to build, you have to nurture, and you have to evolve over time. And once you get the adoption, once people see the benefit, then they will start thinking of other ways they can use it. And so a good digital twin over years just becomes better, more different, and doing different things. That adoption piece is the tricky bit.
And when people are starting to think about, I guess often the question will come from senior stakeholders going, how can digital twins benefit us? And obviously the first question then is, what are the use cases? And have you got some thoughts or suggestions of what people should start thinking about when they're asking those questions?
I think it comes down to, do I have a problem which is difficult to decide on the best route to take? And I mean, we've had a whole year of an example of great digital twin evolving with the pandemic, because it's a tricky problem. There's a lot of change and there's lots of data around saying, what do I do? And so over the last year, we have seen digital twins evolving, where politicians, doctors are all saying we're guided by the science. It's essentially a digital twin, which is being informed by data, which is evolving every day, to be able to give a better view for what should we do, what are the likely outcomes. And that is helping decision making. And that is often the areas where digital twins are the most useful. It's where I've got a problem, I can't see what choices I should make. And it helps the decision making by being able to explore options quickly, to be able to try things out safely, to see what the outcomes might be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I guess kind of jumping over to you, May, trying to get that message across to board members and the like is a non-trivial thing, especially when things are quite early days. It's not like you can point to an example of, look what this company's often done. How have you approached that within the toolkit?
I think we do, if people go to the DT Hub, there are now an increasing number of sample use cases where people have successfully done it. So you can show to management, this isn't, I think one of the problems with a new phrase or a new concept is that management will say, oh, it's just the next buzzword and it's all a lot of hype and it's all going to go away. But they said the same thing about email. And it is explaining, this is why it will save you time and money and give you a better asset or make your life easier. And so the examples are out there and are growing, and we're making a lot of effort to provide people with that compelling evidence. But there's also sitting down and putting together that business case for your particular circumstance. What is the data you are capturing from their asset? And in the long term, how do you want to maintain that asset, update it, and then work out, okay, using a digital twin will be more efficient rather than doing it the old school way. And you can run that scenario, particularly because there is 3D modeling and such have been around a long time, and this is, say, the step beyond that. So you do have, say, use cases for the previous, say, stage of it. So I would say it's there if people look for it. And there's certainly more information than there was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I'm sure we can get Tammy to share a link to the use cases on the hub for those that haven't seen them. And I think, yeah, one of the things that kind of I've also been conscious of is there may not always be an exact example of what you're trying to do, but there are really good examples from other sectors. There are emerging ones within the built environment now as well. And it's trying to get people to sometimes look slightly outside of the box and synthesize from what they've got there. Is there any kind of particular points of challenge, I guess, you looked to address through the digital twin toolkit? Was there kind of common questions that you kept kind of getting asked in order to kind of to put those into points of consideration within the toolkit? Is there any examples you've got of that, May?
I think one of the first things was just, what is a digital twin? How does it differ from a BIM model? And why should I spend more money on this? What's the additional concrete benefit it provides? And I think that at the very core was needed to be the question we had to answer. Why does this make your life better? Whether it's better measurement of things or whatever it may be for you. And we looked into what were the particular aspects that people may use digital twins for, and then enabled and provided them examples and concrete aspects that they could pin to that. So it's not just one use of a digital twin for everybody. We sat down and worked out for quite some time what are the most common uses, and then how can we provide people with almost ammunition to prove to their management that it is in their interest to implement.
Yeah, thank you. And Peter, I'd be interested to get your view on this. We often get asked the question of, isn't this just a rebranding of simulation, or isn't this just a rebranding of building management systems? And it's not always the easiest question to answer, but it'd be good to get your sense on kind of how you respond to those sorts of questions when you get them.
I think the difference between a digital twin and a model is the digital twin is updated with real data frequently enough so that it's reflecting current state. So if you're having to make a decision every day, a digital twin is updating information throughout the day so that you're best placed to make that decision. As far as the difference between digital twins and BIM is concerned, BIM is a very good reflection of the state of an asset at a particular time. What the digital twin is doing is showing how something behaves. So it's introducing the sort of the physics or the flow of what's going on. And so you can create a digital twin without access to BIM, although it's a lot easier when you have it for a construction related type project. But BIM by itself doesn't tell you how things flow at any particular time. So the two are complementary.
Yeah, I think I agree. And digital twins is always going to be a bit of a catch-all for a number of different things. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And I think there will be existing technologies which could be badged as digital twins. And again, I think that's just the nature of when you get an emerging term like this. But I think personally, one of the things that's really important to me is that it doesn't become another hype cycle that doesn't really deliver what the original expectations were. Perhaps, yeah, let's start with you on that, Peter. Do you think there is something we can do to make sure that we don't fail to deliver on those aspirations people have?
Well, I think that you have to start with the premise that the reason for the digital twin is to support decision making, to make better interventions. So that's the reason you have them. And the feedback that you've given is to keep it current, so that the outcomes it forecasts are trusted. How do you make them? How do you make them successful? I think you have to identify very early on the sort of important use cases, so you can build up slowly, start reasonably simply, and then evolve over time. So don't try to introduce a incredibly complex digital twin from day one, because it just won't work. And so that's where there's a certain discipline of identifying the important questions you want to answer early, deal with them, and then allow it to evolve.
Thank you. And what's your view on that, May? How do you think we make sure we can live up to some of those expectations?
I think one of the starting points is to make sure documentation and our contracts and specifications reflect what people want. So going back to my earlier example, if the client says, I want a digital twin, they're going to get to the end and not find they get probably many benefits from it. It doesn't achieve the purposes, whether the wider purposes or their specific ones. And if documentation says, I want this sort of digital twin, I want it for these purposes in the short and long term, and this is how I want parties to work together to achieve that, and then that's all, people factor that in and work out the correct process, then I think the likelihood of you everyone getting what was intended is much higher. Unfortunately, you can't just rely on the fact that we're all going to collaborate and we'll work it out as we go along. Because parties move around during, in the construction industry, understanding changes, understanding at the beginning is probably different. It's just going to be a bit of a mess, or you're certainly not going to maximize the potential.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm conscious of time. I know we started a little bit late today, so I don't mind overrunning by a few minutes. But I think one really good question, just to get both of you to answer, really, is what do you think we're going to see over the next couple of years? I know this is an inherently difficult question, but I'd be quite keen to just get your views or what your hopes are that we'll see over the next couple of years kind of emerging in this space. Peter, did you want to try starting with that one?
Yeah, I would hope that over the next few years, we will see digital twins center stage in the push towards net zero, because net zero by 2050, I believe, is unachievable without it. And because it's terrific change, it's trying to understand generation, distribution, use of energy in a completely different way. And we're trying to do it in a very short period of time. And hopefully people will recognize, in the same way they rely on digital twins to tell them the weather, to tell them where they're going on sat-nav systems, they will say, actually, this is the approach we should be taking for this huge challenge we're facing.
Brilliant, thank you, Peter. And how about you, May?
I would hope that digital twins become more business as usual. As Peter said, it's a very significant part of achieving net zero, but also making assets function better for the people who use them, people who are in offices or buildings. There's hopefully a more shift towards things improving from that perspective. And so rather than digital twin still being considered a bit of hype, it is just something that everyone does for all the different benefits it brings.
Brilliant, thank you. And I noticed we actually just got a question coming in for you, May, from Andy Parnell Hopkinson, asking whether anything can be done to overcome the reluctance in the US to adopt BIM because of the data ownership liability insurance reasons. Have you got any particular thoughts on that you'd like to share?
I think there's always, and we had it here, there's a significant fear, as with digital twins, are we going to give up all our copyright? Are we going to be responsible for everything? And I think part of the way of getting around that is making it clear within, again, going back to documentation, because if it's clear what you're responsible for and what I'm responsible for, if something happens, you may not like the answer, but you're not going to have a long drawn out expensive argument about it. It's always going to be the gaps which result in disagreement. So, and I think people underestimate the power of just talking to each other and having that meeting and having ongoing discussions of, okay, you want BIM or you want digital twin, who should own this? Who should be responsible if this thing happens? Have you checked this? And we need to be almost more, we need to ask more questions than we would in a more established area of construction, and need to be more pedantic than we would otherwise because of the wide aspect of what people understand to be particular positions.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it may be difficult, it may be complicated, but it can be done, and a lot of it just needs to start with having those conversations. And for anyone that is interested in that legal side of things, there we have some stuff around legal roundtable we held a little while ago with some recommendations in that space. But yeah, big thanks to May and Peter for taking the time today. Our next one is with James Harris and Matthew West. He will be giving us a bit of a kind of technical expose on the information management framework. So that should be a really interesting session as well. Yeah, May and Peter both on the hub. So if you've got any questions, please follow up with them afterwards. But thanks everyone for joining. Thanks May and Peter, and have a great day, and speak to you all again soon.
Okay, see you later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.